Nubook 1, From Then to Now. Part 5. I was still standing on the beach, with the bright sunshine overhead, and the splendour of this real world, with all its aliveness surrounding me. I looked within myself ever so deeply, to try and bring up something that would relate to what I had just experienced. My heart was now searching for this wonderful being who I had just met. She brought a new magic into my life from the short time she was with me. Life was now pulling me in another direction, and had opened a new door that would change my life forever. I looked into the light within myself, and then I saw her. She was a radiant being, all aglow in the most wondrous light of somewhere unknown. "Hello, Goldie, you found me. I am so glad. It is the love in your heart that brought you here. I will always be around, and I will see you many more times before your life is over upon earth," she said, as she was perfectly aglow. We were in a world of light, where there was only light. As she looked at me, I could sense a reality of being in a unique position of amazing freedom. The light we were in had a life all its own. I had no words for what was taking place, and so I just looked at her, and at the same time became aware of the surroundings. Then something within me realised that the men were returning from their hunt, and suddenly I was back in my body. The light of dawn was showing itself again, and beginning to expose what was taking place. As I awoke, I could just barely make out the men walking around. They were grumbling about something. Then Jess and Riley came over to where I was. "Goldie, where were you? We've been out searching most of the night for the Indian and his friends," said Jess, as he seemed to be very tired and could hardly speak straight. "Really?" I said, trying to act as though I didn't know what took place. "You didn't hear us running around all night?" he asked, with a dumbfounded look on his face. "I was asleep, and when I sleep, I am sometimes hard to wake up. I didn't even know you two were gone," I said, hoping they would just let it go at that. "You won't believe what happened, Goldie," said Riley, while he was trying to catch his breath. "Not only did the Indian and his friends get away, but they took the horses again, and several of ours. Somebody is going to be walking back to the fort or riding double." The thought came to my mind if it was my horse that was missing, but then I got an impression that mine was still here. "I hope mine is still here," I said, just to sound friendly. We soon found out whose horses were taken. One of them was the sergeant's, and oh boy, was he upset. He did a little ranting and raving at the men for a little bit, about their lack of paying attention and handling the situation. The sergeant decided to take one of the men's horses, while those without had to ride double with others. Everyone got their gear together, and all of us mounted up. Then the corporal asked the sergeant where we were going. "After those darn Indians that stole my horses. Where do you think, Mr. Miller?" replied the sergeant in a nasty, shouting voice. The corporal became a little whiter in the face, and said nothing more for the rest of the day. "Goldie, front and centre!" yelled the sergeant. I immediately came to the front of the troop and next to the sergeant. "Do your job, half-breed!" I want those renegades caught, he said, as he was looking at me with a real intent to get those Indians. It was quite obvious the direction the Indians were headed in. The ground was rather soft where we were, and there were tracks everywhere. I took off in the direction of their trail, and the troop followed. The sun was now up and at our backs. The trail looked as though it headed back to the Indian camp, but I figured that would be too obvious, especially for Indians, because they were very clever when it came to losing themselves from others. We followed the tracks as far as they went, which took us about half a day. Then the sergeant wanted us to stop and rest. The area we were in had some nice big trees, and so I parked my horse under one of them and sat on the ground for a while with the cat. Little Feather had a few words to say about what was taking place. "When are we going back to your parents' house? I need a home where I am fed and loved. This wild trip we've been on is no place for a cat," he said, with a little whimper in his tone. I had to laugh, and as I did, my friends came over. Jess and Riley came up and asked me what I was doing. I was taught that if I lay next to the earth, that I would be able to hear the direction of those I was after, I replied. They didn't say a word. Then they sat down and just watched me. I closed my eyes and went to the real side. I was suddenly a viewpoint, hovering above the area and out of all the lower bodies altogether. I was above the ground and soaring like a bird. I felt myself moving above the land, and then I began searching the area. I then remembered what I was looking for. It was the Indians. I began to go higher until I could see for miles. Suddenly, along the horizon, I spotted the Indians. There were 5 of them, along with the horses. Then I moved toward them to try and see the area they were in. All of a sudden, I heard the sergeant yelling for everyone to get back on their horses. I was then immediately back in my body and aware of what was going on, so I stood up. "I know where they are," I said to Jess and Riley, and went to tell the sergeant. "Sergeant, sir, I know where the Indians have headed." "You do, youngster?" he said, rather surprised. "They're headed west, sir, toward the ocean," I said, as I watched the funny expressions on his face. He looked at me, rather suspect, and said, "How do you know where they are, Goldie?" "Sir, I'm the scout, and haven't I always led you on the right trail?" I said, feeling ready to ride. He rubbed his chin, and then seemed to be lost for words, and said, "You know something, son? You're right. You do always seem to know where we need to go. Well then, let's go. Lead the way, youngster." Then he saddled up and watched me as I went back to my horse. The cat was already on the horse. For the first time in a while, I was also excited about finding the Indians. It just seemed like a lot of fun. "Can't we stay and take a longer nap first?" asked Little Feather. "Not this time, little buddy. We're on a big rush now," I said, smiling to myself. I wasn't serious about the chase, but I wanted the others to think that I was. Besides, I knew that this would be my last time, and so I wanted to get on with it and get it done. Everyone was ready to go, and so off we went. I knew exactly where they were as long as they continued to head in the same direction. The sun was now straight up, and it was another hot day. I was once again leading the troop, so I couldn't do much daydreaming. I had to stay alert and focused. "You saw them from the invisible side, didn't you, Goldie?" said Little Feather, as I turned and looked at him with a smile. He was very aware, and sometimes went with me on my real journeys, but he wouldn't always tell me. He would sometimes hide out in the unseen worlds, and just watch what I would do. Then he would say funny things about where I went and what I did. I wondered if he saw the beautiful woman who came to see me. "I saw her," he said, and then went to sleep. We rode for the rest of the day. I didn't think that we would catch up to them before nightfall, because they were moving faster than we were. I started to think about all the hunts that I had been on. It was always an endless journey of chasing someone. My friend and guide, Rebazar, never seemed to be chasing anyone. He was always in the worlds of light, and always happy to serve others. I began to wonder how long I would be on the earth, and having to go through all these tiring events. I liked the invisible side so much better. The end of the day was near, and the hot sun was finally giving up and decided to set in the west. Everyone looked real tired, because they had already been up for most of the night. Looking over my shoulder, I could see that the sergeant was very tired also. He looked as though he could fall asleep in his saddle any minute. I rode over to him. "Sergeant, sir," I said, "they have a real good head start on us, and they are moving faster than we are." The sergeant took a minute to consider what I had said, and then yelled, "Halt!" Great, I thought, finally. "We'll camp here for the night, men," he said, as he dismounted and almost fell to the ground. There was a lone tree up ahead, and so I rode over to it and tied my horse up. Jess and Riley came right after me and did the same. "Hey, Goldie, you can't ditch us," said Jess, as he was trying to laugh through his exhaustion. I laughed as they settled in by me. They took their time to get their things arranged because of how tired they were. All of us walked around and gathered some brush for the fire. After a while, we were sitting around our little fire and relaxing. The cat went out for a walk to see what he could find. He liked the afternoons and night time to prowl and do his funny stuff. "Well, Goldie, where do you think the Indians are?" asked Riley. "I don't exactly know, but I do know they are far ahead of us, and we could continue to chase them for the rest of our lives," I said, as all of us laughed for a bit. "It does seem that I am getting older out here," said Jess, as he laughed about that one. I was thinking that these two were beginning to see the light, you might say. I think they were realising what a game all of this chasing around is. I have come to the conclusion that there are two basic lifestyles on Earth. The first one is where you live like everyone else and do all the things they do and never look for anything else. Then there always exists the opportunity to explore all the possibilities that are not always seen on the surface, and discover what most other people will not. I like the second choice better. I could never live the ordinary life of the average person, where they only live for their physical life only. After their life is done here, they will go to one of the temporary heavens, and then return here to do the same things over again, without any real awareness about where they are at and how life really is. I knew the sergeant, on the other hand, had a different view of things. He took everything rather serious, because he was in charge, and he had to hold up a certain image for the men, an image that he liked himself. If he became too much of a comedian, the men wouldn't respect him, which will never happen with him. I wouldn't want his job as the commander of others, and always going nowhere. If I was in a leadership position, I would explore the individual qualities of each person, and then allow them to express themselves as to how they would contribute to the given situation. Then I would decide to do something that provided a real benefit for everyone. But for the situation at hand, I wouldn't be chasing Indians for their own horses. I would simply go out and get my own. The cavalry and the official position they have created is something that they have decided to defend, no matter what it takes or what the cost, even if it's a man's life. So many unnecessary situations could be avoided out here without the interference of some form of invented attitude of control. If I was to speak my piece out loud, I know the cat would agree. My horse would also have a few words to say, but he usually lets the cat do all the talking. At the end of the day it was a beautiful sunset, beautiful because that ball of fire in the sky was really hot, and it was good to see it getting ready to hide behind the earth for a while. We finally had our fire going, and we were all settled in for the night. All of us sat and relaxed, and then Jess finally spoke. "You don't care if we catch these Indians or not, do you, Goldie?" I didn't know what to say right away, but then I spoke. "Why would you say that, Jess?" I replied. "Because you don't seem to be too enthused about the chase," he said. "Actually, I have nothing better to do, and besides, I'm being paid to ride and scout, so I'm fine. But you are right, Jess. I don't have a great concern for catching them. It's just a job, and not a lifestyle for me," I said with a consideration. They seemed to be satisfied with my answer, and soon fell asleep, because they were really tired. I sat there and looked up at the stars for a while, and then removed myself from my body and ended up on the beautiful beach again. There was no one around, and so I decided to take a walk and do a little sightseeing. I liked being here as opposed to the earth. It felt so much freer. I could tell within myself that I didn't have the little annoying attitudes from the personal arena like on earth. I could just be. The sun never seemed to set within this world, and it was not hot like on the earth. I walked along the palm-laden shore, and watched the long palm leaves sway in the gentle breeze. I could see beautiful birds in the trees, as they seemed to be watching me. This is a real life, I thought to myself, a life with all the natural surroundings, where there are no political creations. Each one of us can have our own endlessness without interfering with anyone. The sound of the ocean waves and the trees moving about, along with a few birds, this is such a great place to be. I walked for quite a ways, then sat down to just listen to the ocean. As I looked out over the sea, it was a glittering reflection of dancing light that had a healing effect on me. I liked the feeling of being healed after each day on earth. Everyone goes somewhere into the other worlds for the most part to try and heal themselves from their daily affairs. But most people are not aware they are leaving their bodies while they sleep. They wake up each morning thinking that it is a good night's sleep that does it, when it's really their true being finding the right spot to be. I sat for a while, and as I was about to get up, I happened to look down the beach, and I could see someone coming towards me. As they got closer, I could see that it was Miss Shiz How-are-you? "Hello, Goldie," she said in her lovely voice as she approached. I stood up and greeted her with a slight bow, but then she came up to me and gave me a hug and a kiss. "There," she said, "that's better. Now we can get on with things." I was rather surprised and even giggled a little. She was feeling humorous also and laughed with me. We both sat on the white sand and stretched our legs out. She just looked at me and smiled. This was a new experience for me, because I had never really been with a woman or had a relationship. I suddenly liked the idea and liked being with her. "Do you think you'll catch the Indians, Goldie?" she asked, as she looked at me with her beautiful beingness. I began to laugh, and then said, "I don't really want to, because what they are doing is of no concern to me. But then again I will, because this will be my last hunt." Then she said, "I know that about you. You are only interested in the true reality. It holds your heart, doesn't it?" I looked at her and said, "Yes, the life of real adventure and trueness. That is what I live for, but most of all to stand in the real light and be with the is." She smiled and took my hand and then looked at me. "I have always loved you like no one else in all your lifetimes, and I will continue to do so until you return to the higher levels, where we will be together." I was rather taken by her being with me and what she said. She was so straightforward and honest, I could tell that she had a pure heart and being. Rebazar said that he would take me to those places some day, but when, I do not know, I said. "Your time is coming when he will take you. There is no rush during this lifetime. You have a lot to learn, and you will be around for a while yet," she said. "I think that I would like to do something besides scouting before I leave this lifetime," I said, as I sat there and tried to think of something. "You have many gifts you can share with others, and so you will figure out what to do with the rest of your life," she said in her sweet voice. As I was about to say something, I was suddenly pulled back into my body from the sound of a gunshot. It was another dark and moonless night, and really hard to see. Something was going on, but as of yet I didn't know what. I could hear the men that were camped a distance from me. They were talking and moving around. I couldn't see or hear Jess or Riley, so I figured they were with the others. I stayed where I was at and waited to see what would happen. Eventually Jess and Riley came running back to our spot. "Goldie," said Jess, as he was trying to regain his breath, "you won't believe this for the second time, Goldie, but the Indians came back and stole all the horses. The three of us are the only ones that have horses, because we were over here, away from the others." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Are you kidding me?" I said, as I continued to laugh. "No kidding," said Riley, as he was still trying to catch his breath. "The yelling you are hearing in the distance is the sergeant screaming at the two men who were supposed to stay awake and watch the horses, but they fell asleep on duty. So they're all gone, all the horses are gone. What do you think will happen now, Goldie?" he said, as he was breathing hard. I thought for a moment, and then said, "It's quite obvious, boys. All three of us will be riding back to the fort tomorrow for help, while the rest of the men wait here." Jess and Riley sat back down in the darkness and settled in without saying another word. I could barely see them as they went back to sleep. I lay there for a while and thought about what was to come. This could be my chance to leave and find something else to do. I thought long and hard about what else to do, but as of yet I couldn't decide. I wanted to make a real difference in some way, but I knew I had to get away from this situation that I had come to know. It was soon early dawn, and the light of the hot flaming ball was about to make its way over the horizon again. I was looking forward to going back to the fort, because I knew that it was my time for a change. The sergeant came over to our campsite with a real hard look on his face. "Okay, men, this is what you are going to do. You three will ride back to the fort for help. We have enough provisions to last a week or so, and even then we can find something around here to survive on. I want the three of you to take off immediately," he said very sternly. "Yes, sir," I said, and got up real fast, and was ready to ride in a matter of moments. Little Feather stretched himself out, and finally jumped up, and was ready to go. The horse made some noises that gave me the hint that he was happy about the news. I told the horse and the cat that this would be our last ride with the army. They were very excited. It wasn't long before we were all on our way and heading back to the fort. The fort was only about 2 to 3 days from where we were. I wasn't going to tell Jess and Riley about this being my last trip until later, but when we reached the fort I was going to get what was owed to me and be on my way. I hadn't seen my parents in years, and so they would be my first stop. I was overjoyed at the decision I made of not having to trail horse thieves any more. My horse and cat even knew that we were going to have a change in our journey, because they seemed to have more energy than before. I had been so busy with what was going on with my real experiences that I had forgotten to have a little talk with him. It was hard talking to my horse while we were riding. It was much easier when we rested. I was going to make a point of it this very night, and see what he had to say. The cat didn't usually listen to the horse. He had his own ideas about life and how things should be. It was another long and hot day on the saddle, but it wasn't that bad, knowing that I would soon be finished with all the man-hunting. The afternoon was soon upon us, as we came to a small river with huge trees that were scattered all about. I always looked for trees to camp near. It always felt better than to be out in the open, because I actually liked trees, and some of them would talk to me at times. They were also a gift from the Great One, because they provided shade in the summer months. I really liked the openness and the feeling of the big sky all around, but I always thought about the ocean and being there. We decided to camp for the night, because we were going to make it to the fort in 3 days with ease. I didn't see the need to hurry. I wanted to enjoy my idea of getting a new life, and just take our time returning. Besides, I was now feeling like a youthful Indian again, after so many years of intensive training. After we settled in, I took my horse for a walk along the banks of the river to have a talk with him. He had a lot to talk about. He said that we hadn't talked for a while, and he had a lot to say. I listened as he talked. "Those horses belong to the Indians," he said. "They had originally captured and trained them. I spoke with all the horses the soldiers had. They were all from the Indians. The Indians that you were following are good people. They merely wanted what was theirs to begin with. The Indians don't really care if the white man gets his own horses, but they don't like it when they steal theirs. The horses wanted to go with the Indians because the white man is harsh on them, and that is why the Indians got them so easily." "I can understand the Indians' motives," I said, "because I wouldn't like it if someone took you." Then he continued, "You were right in not judging the situation because it had nothing to do with you. You are also right about what you are doing now, and that is getting on with your life and leaving the hunting of men to others. You will do greater deeds than other men could even dream of. Our destiny is to ride free from the restrictions of the society that is being created in this time. There is so much more, and we will find it." I gave him a hug around his neck, and then he became silent. I know how he is. He speaks his piece, and then lets it be. I liked hearing what he had to say, because it is a wonderful experience being able to communicate with him. I didn't know of anyone else that could do it, except for my parents and my grandfather. It is hard for me to believe, but the great eagle has a real purpose for me. I felt privileged to know what I will do, but it is hard to accept, so I liked hearing about it from others. I also liked hearing their views on what was taking place in my life at this very moment. I have learned that life is an endless procession of experience, and there is no end, only a continuous new beginning. That is what I was trying to tell Jess and Riley before, about the good book that so many like to believe in. It had its day with what it provided, as life is always new, and there are so many that are having better experiences today than those people of the past. It has amazed me how long the scriptures have endured. It just goes to show you that it takes a while to let go of something small to have something even so much bigger and better. Everything I have been taught from the real side has nothing to do with any written material that most people look to. Life is all about real freedom, not laws and rules that have been documented. These things have been politically invented to steal from others.